Welcome everyone. You are in the right place to see an overview of the IMAGINiT utilities for Civil 3D 2020 with your presenter, Joe Hedrick. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jana. Good afternoon or good morning to everybody, depending on where you're dialing in from. My name is Joe Hedrick, and we're going to take a look at the latest update for the Civil 3D utilities. So thank you everybody for being here. Just a little bit about myself. If you're familiar with our utilities, I've been doing these webcasts every year for the last couple of years at the very least. But welcome to all. I see a lot of names in the attendee list that I recognize. But just a little bit about myself. I've been at IMAGINiT for almost 19 years now. It'll be 19 in September. But prior to that, prior to becoming a professional geek, I did work for the city of Portsmouth for almost three and a half years, and then a private engineering and surveying firm for 5 years. So I have kind of been where most of you are, and I am a licensed land surveyor. I've got my EIT. I am allowed able to sit for the PE as soon as I want to stop long enough and study for that test. But it's been quite a long time since I've been in school, so I'm not sure when that's going to happen. But getting to the utilities, and my thoughts for the presentation this afternoon is, we'll cruise through the PowerPoint probably fairly quickly. We're getting up to 14 tools now, so there's a lot to show, and I want to spend as much time as possible inside of the product. But this year, this release, we did add 3 tools to the utilities, bringing our total to 14. You can see the tools or utilities that we added are at the top of the list. We're very excited about them. I'm excited to show them off. Continuing on our theme with pipes, we had several tools when it came to modifying gravity pipe networks. We've added 2 tools to that, one for an invert adjustment, and then one that we're calling Quick Edit Pipes. If you're familiar with the Quick Edit feature line routine, this works similarly to that. We've got a tool that was kind of requested by several surveying clients of ours to kind of flatten and explode feature lines, and then all of our other tools that we've had over the years. One of the most frequent questions that we get year over year is, are the utilities version specific? And the answer is yes, they are. So what we're going to look at are the utilities for 2020, Civil 3D 2020, that is. But keep in mind, we have other, installers for 2019, 2018, 2017. It just doesn't contain, the newest tools that you're seeing here. So for the 2019 utilities, it's going to contain everything that's on this list except for the top 3 that are marked new, et cetera. So as we move along, one of the first tools are really, that was included in the initial release of these when we did them back in 2014 was auto offset. And this is a utility created, really almost purposely to help create strip topo annotation. There's a couple of versions of this tool. There's the version that just adds text. Several years after we developed that, Autodesk finally opened up the API of Civil 3D a little bit to allow us, more integration with the label styles. So now the tool creates station offset labels. But again, this is, really purpose-built to help annotate strip topo. Another one of the initial tools was the point stakeout report. And, really, this came about as a need to integrate point information, so things like point number, northing, easting, elevation, description, with alignment information, station, and offset. So in Civil 3D today, there's there's still not a really good, easy way to do this. There is a way with reports and hacking them together, but it creates, a lot of opportunity for error. So this tool is purpose-built to do this. You get to define, columns and the information that you want to show, and then we provide the ability to export either to an HTML file that could be printed or to a CSV file that could be opened in Excel for further manipulation. Our, by far, most popular tools is import from Google. I'm sure everybody remembers, if you've been using Civil 3D for any length of time, Civil 3D 2012 was the last version of Civil 3D that integrated with Google Earth imagery and terrain information. Unfortunately, that tool went away, and like I said, in the utilities for Civil 3D 2014 is when IMAGINiT kind of brought it back, if you will. It's a little bit different than how the Google Earth one worked. We don't use Google Earth. We actually use Google Maps. So it's the same imagery that is available on your cell phone if you use Google Maps on your cell phone. But the nice part about this is it doesn't require anything else to be installed, like Google Earth on your machine. So we'll take a look at those tools here coming up. The gravity pipe utilities are the second most popular tools that we've built. And we're getting up, we've got 4 or 5 of these tools now to manipulate gravity pipes. Everything from swapping multiple parts at one time. We had a tool that we added not that long ago to raise or lower an entire pipe run or a section of a pipe run. We had tools to manipulate slopes of pipes. And the 2 tools that we added, one that we call pipe invert adjustment, really allows you to pick, the beginning invert, move down the run several structures, select the ending invert elevation, and the utility will calculate what those slopes should be to ultimately get to those 2 inverts. The other tool that we added, like I said, is called Quick Edit Pipes, and it's intended to be almost identical in functionality to Quick Edit feature lines, and that from plan view, being able just to hover over a pipe and a tooltip value, get inverts on either end, get slopes on either, or get slopes that the pipe is running, and be able to adjust it, from plan view very, very quickly. The other new tool this release is Flatten Explode feature line. And if you've ever worked with feature lines before, if you explode them, interesting things happen in the curve segments. And the reason for that is, if a feature line is in 3 dimensions, there really is no such thing, at least in AutoCAD primitives, as a 3D curve. So what happens is when we explode feature lines that have any elevation to them at all, then the curves get replaced with approximations and segments, or tessellations. So what this particular routine does is we will essentially flatten the feature line first and then explode it. And the net result of that is a polyline where the curves stay curves. This was, originally requested by a handful of our surveying clients, but as we started showing it around internally on the team, there's a couple of grading workflows and grading implications that this tool can address as well. Create offset points. Again, this is another one of those tools that was developed specifically for surveyors, but it's definitely been used in grading situations. The idea is, it's somewhat difficult to be able to click on a feature line and generate points to stake it out, right? And, if we were generating points right on that feature line, that would be one thing, but usually surveyors want to stake things out at an offset. So that's what this utility does. It provides a pretty simple and straightforward interface. Pick the feature line, give it offset information, tell it how you want to calculate elevations, and the routine will go through and just kind of systematically blast through and generate the offset points. All right, profile from points. We wanted to have a way to quickly generate profiles. And the scenario goes something like this. If we're out, maybe surveying and, collect a bunch of points along a ditch line, let's say per se, how could I view that profile, quickly? A lot of times surveyors, they don't do a whole lot of the design workflows. So the whole idea of, generating a surface and, then they are familiar with surfaces, but generating an alignment, then sampling, then generating the profile. A lot of kind of, true traditional surveyors don't get into all of that. So what this routine does is really all of those steps in the background. And what happens is we select the points, and behind the scenes, the routine will create the alignment, and we just tell it where to place the profile. All right, KML and KMZ import. It kind of dawned on us, a couple of years ago that, Civil 3D will export KML or KMZ, essentially Google Earth files, but it didn't have a way to import them. So that's what this particular routine does. It just, allows for the opposite. Lots of times developers, owners, have KML files or have Google Earth information because it's easy. They're small, it's easily emailed back and forth. Usually a lot of people have that application. It's free if you don't. So, one of our clients had, received a handful of these files, and they're like, well, how can we get them into Civil 3D? And that was some sort of a quandary just because the tool isn't there. So, yeah, I think it was either last year or 2 years ago when this tool got developed, but essentially, being able to import that data, from either a KML file or a KMZ file into Civil 3D. And then the last tool is the styles renamer. And, the idea for this is, actually a couple of fold. But the main reason is think about reference templates now. Civil 3D has had this functionality for the last couple of years. Just being able to essentially, I think of it almost as XREFing a set of styles into your current drawing. Well, if you're doing that with, maybe a client's template or another company's template, then, what you're left with is kind of a set of styles that, you could contain, or a drawing that contains, probably your company styles as well as these other styles from references. So this tool was developed as a really quick way to be able to add a prefix or add a suffix, to those styles, very, very quickly. And then just while we were in there, we started figuring out, hey, you know what? It'd be really great if we could just find and replace in style names. And we use it a lot, for our own development purposes, when we build templates and whatnot for clients. But just being able to, if let's say you added a prefix and then, that was your company initials, maybe after the fact, somebody decided that they wanted to change that. Maybe the company changed names. Maybe the company was acquired. This would be a way to go through and very quickly change, those style names. All right, Jana. So with that, I am going to stop doing this and share my screen now. Maybe. You seen it, Shanna? There we go. I think it's.
Not yet.
Yeah, there it comes.
There it goes.
Yeah, this new WebEx I'm still getting used to. But all right. So here we are, and my goal is we're gonna kind of go through and demonstrate absolutely as many of these as we have time for. I'm certainly going to make sure that we hit all the brand new ones. But again, if you've got questions, please just type them into the Q&A pane. Be as specific as you can, and we will save time to address these at the end of the presentation. But we started talking about auto offset, so we'll go ahead and address that here. And what we have is just strip topo that was collected. This happens to be in Florida. There's an alignment running. It's depending on how you want to define the orientation. From the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. It's technically from north to south. Just notice that my entire view is twisted here. But the way that auto offset works is, we select the command. We're going to pick label styles, right? And we need to give it a label style for the left side of the alignment and for the right side of the alignment. Another one of the very frequently asked questions, it's all centers around what's magic about these styles? How do these styles get created? I will tell you that in the installation directory of the utilities, we provide a sample drawing that contains these two styles that I'm using. There's nothing magic about them. They're really just technically a station offset alignment label style. But the big thing is it's going to be in its drag state. So you need to define in its drag state as kind of as composed as opposed to stacked, and you should get along just fine. But we pick the style for the left, we pick the style for the right. We can, if we want to add a marker, we can. Usually we don't, but we allow for that if you want to. We will list all the alignments that are in the drawing. If not, if you want to pick it, you can select the ellipsis here and pick the alignment from the screen. Offset distance is the distance from the alignment to where the text is going to start. And then maximum distance is at what point out and away from the alignment do we want to stop calculating points. So if the requirement is, hey, I only have to calculate, and show station offset information for points within the right-of-way, and it happens to be a 50-foot right-of-way, then, we could just say, 25 foot on either side here. If you want to make sure that you get absolutely everything, just make this number something obscenely large, and you'll be fine. The last couple of prompts, label side, essentially point side means, if the point lands on the left side of the alignment, the label is going to be on the left side of the alignment. If the point's on the right side of the alignment, the label will be on the right side. But we do have tools to, force them all to the left side of the alignment or all to the right side. Finally is how do we want to select these points? Selection is I'm just going to pick them off the screen, or if the ones that we want to annotate happen to fall in a point group, we can just select that point group here. But we'll say, okay, I'm just going to window in a handful of these points and hit enter. We'll see that the labels get generated. Right? And you can see this point right here again, point number 1142. There's the station, there's the offset, and in my case, it's just showing the description. Right? Any point information is fair game. So if you wanted to show elevation with this, we absolutely could. If you want to rearrange how this looks, no big deal at all. We can certainly do that. All right. So while we're in this drawing, this is a great drawing to show off the point station report as well. And I will go ahead and launch that command. Similar type of dialog box, all centered around how do we want to select the points? Do I want to do them all? Do I want to limit them to a point group? Do I just want to draw a window, and pick them just like I did for the auto offset points? Do I have a numeric range that I know of? Do I want to do points, 1 to 100 or something like that? Again, we can pick the alignment and then the output. Do I want to go to Excel, or do I want to go to an HTML page that's easily printed? So we'll do that in this case. Under Customize, this is where we select what essentially the columns or the format of the report, the information that we want to show. On the left side is every conceivable possible thing that you could annotate. On the right side is what's been selected, and then once you have it over on the right side, you can select and use the move up, move down buttons to reorder and rearrange columns. Now, one thing that I will add, and actually I'm going to go ahead and run this first, and it's going to prompt me to save the report. So we'll just give this thing a name, save. It's going to ask me to select the points. Then it's generated it, and then it opens it. So one thing that we get asked quite frequently centers around the precisions. 4 decimal places for northing and easting, 2 decimal places for elevations, stations, offsets, etc. So this information is controlled in the ambient settings of the drawing. We made a conscious effort that we try to keep the interfaces somewhat clean and simplified as much as we can. So instead of having another whole section in that window about units and precision, we just decided to, hey, use the ambient settings of the drawing and let those control the report. So if you're not familiar with ambient settings, under the settings tab, right click on the drawing name, it goes to drawing settings, we'll click ambient settings, and then it's this information right here. So we can see under coordinate, there's where that precision came from, and there's elevation, etc. All right. So while we're inside of this drawing, this is a good time to show off one of the newer tools, and we'll do flat and explode feature line here. And just for kicks, we're going to zoom in, and we'll take a look at this particular survey figure. And this was collected in the field. You can see that the arcs aren't perfect; they're not perfectly smooth. But what happens is, if we were to explode this with the explode command, and select it, as I zoom in, notice all of the individual segments. And that's that tessellation that I spoke with, and that comes from this line being in 3 dimensions, and Civil 3D not knowing what to do with the arc. So it split it up and tessellated it. So let's get back to the feature line. And essentially the way this tool works is very simple. We select it. We can pick just one, or you can draw a window around. Really the only rule with this is it takes 2 inputs, either just a normal feature line or a survey figure. In this case, just because at the end of the day, survey figures are essentially feature lines anyway. We'll hit enter. It's going to ask us, do you want to erase the existing entities? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending on your situation. In my case, I'm going to say yes. And what you'll see is, notice now when we zoom in, we still have the arcs intact. However, we're left with polylines, and 2D polylines at that have been flattened to elevation 0. All right, so let's move on to the most popular tools, and it's import from Google, import from Bing. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to just show import from Google. Import from Bing works identically. The only thing that's different is the provider of the data, Microsoft versus Google. But we'll go ahead and select import from Google. And the thing to know about this is, what we do when this box opens up is we designed it, to be the center of the visible extents inside of your drawing is the center of this dialog box, right? So if you've got a georeferenced drawing, you shouldn't have to pan around an awful lot. Really all you would need to do is zoom in or zoom out, just depending on, the level of display that you're looking for. So what I mean by that is, even though I can, when I move my mouse over, the area here, it turns to a hand, I could pan all around, but really all I need to do is zoom in, to, the area that, is in question. In the bottom right-hand corner, we've got 3 options of what we want to import. We can import just the georeferenced image. We can import just the terrain information. And, the third option is basically both of them. So that's both of them is what I'm going to do. Just to show this off, we'll hit OK. The next thing it's going to ask me for is the terrain sampling. Now, we need to consider the source of this data, right? It's usually USGS data, something along those lines. So, getting really fine and detailed, for the most part, you're not going to gain a whole lot here. So, but what we do is we tell it the X intervals and the Y intervals. So you can see that if I change these to 50 feet by 50 feet, you can see the estimated number of points, the speed that this routine works. Obviously is contingent on the number of points that we're importing is one of them. I'm going to say OK. And right, we'll see it go out and retrieve the elevations. I will tell you, that happened a little bit faster than I was hoping for. But I was going to say, while it's working, other things that factor in how fast we receive this information. Number one, the size of the area, the density of the points. The things that we have absolutely no control over is, just the workload on Google servers, the demand on those servers. They're only going to serve it out as fast as they can. And then obviously the speed of your own internet connection. But, all of that being said, you can see that, number one, the obvious part is the image comes in, obviously georeferenced. It resides in the same directory as the drawing itself, is where that is. You can also see that the surface got created from Prospector. At this point, it is just a typical Civil 3D surface. So if you want to go through, change, the name of it, change the style of it, you absolutely could. So that's import from Google. Like I said, import from Bing works identically. Only the provider is a little bit different. Right. It's also important to note that, I get questions from time to time of, well, Autodesk provides live maps, and why do you guys have this tool? And it's a fair question. I think for one answer to that is these tools have been around long before live maps was around. Number two is to this day Autodesk still hasn't brought back a tool that allows you to build surfaces from either one of these providers. And number three, this you don't have to have an Autodesk account to be able to use these particular tools. So we work with some clients, especially DoD, military, things like that, to where they can't have these types of accounts. So this particular tools work great in those situations. All right, so okay, so let's take a peek at the pipe tools. And I am going to check one thing real quick. Awesome. You know what? Let's get rid of that. No, we'll keep that. So one of the things that, one of the things, when we started doing these pipes is, we wanted to come up with ways that, allowed users to kind of quickly and easily, manipulate them. But manipulate them as a group instead of one at a time. And Autodesk has great tools, but it seems like they're really focused on manipulating these things one at a time as opposed to as a group. So one of the first of the tools that we wrote, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to zoom in on this area because we're going to work with these pipes right here at the end. One of the first ones we wrote when it came to gravity pipes was swapping multiple parts. Being able to very quickly select, hey, this pipe and this pipe, change it from a 24-inch RCP to something like a 36-inch RCP. And you can see that Civil 3D and all of its dynamicness, we can see the changes to those pipes. You can also see the labels change up here. It absolutely does not matter that, which space you pick it in, whether plan view or profile view. We can go through and pick, maybe larger structures in this case, and everything adjusts. The second tool that we wrote was the grading tool, where essentially I wanted to pick a run or pick 2 points and tell it the slope between those structures. So maybe we'll pick this part and this part. Again, it doesn't matter what if I pick them in profile view or plan view, it's going to ask me the starting invert elevation. So we'll keep 621. It's going to ask me for a new grade. So maybe I want to push a 3% grade through here. I have the ability to add node drops. So let's say a 10th at each structure. And at this point, you'll see that it goes through and adjusts all of those points or all of those pipes with a consistent slope. As we kept working with this, we decided hey, well, maybe at this point, maybe we might want to be able to move, the entire run, higher or lower, basically just raise, from one structure to another. And that's what pipe elevation does. It allows us, again, I'm doing this, with this entire run, but it doesn't have to be the entire run, right? I can tell it I want to raise this, maybe 2 feet, right? And, we see that piping adjust. But, one of our team members and one of my colleagues, said, Joe, that's really cool, but it'd be really, we have a need not to be able to pick the beginning invert and the slope, but we want to be able to pick the beginning invert elevation, the ending invert elevation, and just let the system calculate that slope. And that's what one of the new tools does. It's the one called pipe invert. You can see it's been added to the ribbon. And that will pick, the beginning, we'll pick the end. It's going to ask me for that starting invert elevation. So right now it's 623. Let's go back and make it 621 just for something different. It's going to ask me for that ending invert elevation. Right now it's sitting at 612.98. Let's make it 610. Again, we get to add a node drop if we want to. And what you'll see is I zoom in or up just a little bit here, right? We'll see that it's gone through and adjusted each of those pipes accordingly slope-wise, to be able to match those 2 inverts. So hopefully everybody will think that this is a nice addition. It was absolutely a logical addition, yeah, I thought. But the tool that we're probably most proud of in this set of utilities is Quick Edit Pipes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on plan view. This is the only tool that we have that only works in plan view. You know, most of the other ones, you know, will ask you to pick structures, and it doesn't matter if you pick the structure in plan view or profile view. But in this case, this one matters, and it only works in plan view. But notice, you know, as soon as I just selected the tool and hovered my cursor close to the pipe, and you'll see the green glyph, the square glyph to indicate that we're talking about the end of the pipe. You can see as a tooltip goes, its elevation is 621. As I move, you'll see when we get toward the center, just like you would expect with the feature line tool, I hover over, you know, I get a tooltip showing me the slope, right? And really, essentially, what we're doing with this is, you know, with the arrow pointing in this direction, we are holding the starting invert. With the arrow pointing in this direction, we're holding the ending invert. So when you take a look at a pipe properties, Civil 3D lists both, whether, you know, the slope of the pipe, whether you're holding the starting invert or whether you're holding the ending invert. So this is really no different. We're just kind of tapping into that information graphically. And then also we can get the tooltip for the invert over on this other side. But let's just go this direction. We'll click. It's going to say, hey, enter a new slope. Well, you know, maybe I don't want to go 3.33% here. Let's just do 3%. We very quickly, you know, enter that. Maybe up here, I don't want to do 621. Let's do, you know, 622. And very, very quick and easy, you can see that we can go through and adjust all of these slopes. And then hit enter to end the command, and everything's good. So hopefully you'll see that, hopefully you're as excited about these as we are. One small change that we did make to these routines, if you have been a user of these utilities in the past, as I was doing some of those, especially pipe grading and the pipe elevation command, you know, one of the things that we used to prompt for after the command was, do you want to reapply the rules? And a lot of times, you know, we needed to say yes to reapply structure rules so that the manholes would resize themselves so that the sumps would end up correctly, et cetera. Well, because of this whole quick edit thing, you know, we kind of felt that, you know, if it was prompting you every single time, it almost kind of defeats the purpose of the quick edit portion of it. So we moved the prompt to options. Right? So before you run any of these pipe tools for the very first time, you know, come over to the options. You'll see we have pipe tool options here. You know, we've always had the ending style. Do we want to match, you know, inverts, crowns, center lines, as well as, you know, do we want to enter information via slope or grade? But the new command or the new entry in here is apply the rules. And essentially we can always apply the rules, which is what I had it on, which is why things were just resizing. We can never apply the rules, which, you know, you're going to have to go back through and take a look at the structure depths and sumps, et cetera, or to make it revert back to the behavior that it's kind of always been, just select prompt. And at that point, it will go through, and every time you make a change, it'll say, hey, do you want to reapply the rules, yes or no? So just one thing to note there. And as we work through the last of these tools, we'll go to, you know, the next one being offset points. And what I have here is just really nothing more than a corridor. And one of the, is zoom in here, and we'll notice that I have extracted one of the corridor feature lines, right? This happens to be the back of the curb feature line. So, the task, let's say, is to create offset points, based on this. So let's select the command, select that feature line. It does need to be, if you're picking corridor geometry like this, it does need to be extracted from the corridor. Offset distance, positive values are to the right, negative values are to the left. So it is important to understand the direction of the feature line. So we'll just say 10 feet to the right. Let's generate these points every 25 feet. As far as the description, I might say 10-foot offset back of curb. Starting point number, let's start at 1,000. How do we want to handle the elevations? Do I want to just transfer whatever the elevation of the feature line is? That's the elevation of my point. Do I want to start to essentially grade? Do I want to, go by some particular grade? And a grade is by a percentage. Go 2%, 3%, and this is where some of the grading workflows come in with this routine. Do I want to do basically the same thing but enter a slope or a ratio? Then we can do relative offset or absolute elevations, right? But in this case, I'll just say by feature line elevation, I'm going to add all of the points that are about to be created to a point group, and I'm just going to call this offset back of curb. And then the last of the questions have to do with, really vertices. Do I want to create a point at every vertex along that feature line? Maybe, depending on our situation. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But probably more common is, do I want to make sure that I create points at the PCs and the PTs? And I'm going to definitely select that. So we'll say OK here. You can see those points get created starting at 1,000. There's our point description. Our point group got created. And as I zoom out, just with that one command, we've got all of these points that were generated. At this point, we could export them to a data collector for stakeout purposes. We could use these in some form of a grading workflow. They're just Civil 3D point objects at this point. All right, kind of moving down the home stretch with three tools to go. The next one we'll talk about is profile from points. And like I said, during the PowerPoint, our whole goal with this was to very quickly, easily generate profiles. We go out, we shoot a bunch of points. I want to see the profile of those points. Now, this particular example, I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. This is kind of the mouth of a very, very popular inlet right at where the Chesapeake Bay meets the Atlantic Ocean. And there is a tremendous problem of shoaling in this area. So what happens is about every 3 weeks or so, the city of Virginia Beach takes soundings all along this area, to make sure that the waterway, has minimum depths, et cetera. So what you're seeing, all these little red X's are soundings. Right now, just to make this a little bit easier to see, we'll turn this image off. And that makes the X's show up better. And the way this tool works, we'll just say profile from points. It's going to ask us, how do we want to select the points? Do I want to do them all? Do I want to, point group, window select, numeric range? We're going to say, just select the points in the drawing. Now, whether the software does it or whether I manually have to do it, we are generating alignments and profiles. So we need to give them names. So I might call this each one. Now, for alignment style, I typically would have a style in my drawing called no display. I don't really care to see this. In the case of this presentation, I'm going to leave this set to propose just so that you can see that we are generating the alignment. There's nothing magical about it. It shows up like any other alignment does. When we come down for the profile, right, we have to give it a name. So we'll just call it Beach 1 Existing Ground. Again, I need to pick a profile style. How do I want that profile to look? And then how do I want the profile view style, or essentially the grid, to look? I'll say, okay, it's going to ask me to select some points, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of care doing this. I'm just going to pick a couple. I might pick every other one here. And we'll get this one and maybe a couple more. Right? If I happen to window them in, it's going to select them in order. But once I'm done selecting points, I'll hit enter. Right? You'll see it draw that profile through those points. In this case, it labeled it 2. But again, typically, we would have this set to no display. Now it's asking me to select the insertion point for the profile view. So I'm just going to click that. We get the profile. This is a real profile, meaning that you can regen, you can save it. It doesn't matter. This profile is permanent. It's here until you delete it. The alignments show up under centerline alignments. There it is, Beach 1, and then the profiles are going to show up under that as well. All right, so styles renamer. Let's see, yep, closing in on time here. Style renamer, if we take a look at this drawing and this, we'll just do some surface styles here. You can see that really everything in here is prefixed with IMAGINiT. Well, maybe for whatever reason, that's not what I want. I want to change IMAGINiT to just IMAG. So, from Styles Renamer, the very first thing it's going to prompt us for is to pick the styles that we want to modify. Right? And you can see through the tree, this tree, they are absolutely all here. They're nice and categorized. But by default, we select everything. It's up to you if you don't want to, and you can select all, uncheck all, expand and collapse, but we'll tell it to rename the styles, and then under replace text, this is nothing more than find and replace. I can say I want to find IMAGINiT, replace it with IMAG, hit rename. It's going to tell us how many styles were affected. It's going to show us the styles that were affected, and we regen that. It works for just a second, and we're left with just IMAG in front of there. Right? If we run this a couple more times, just some of the power of this and things that we can do with it. Maybe if I wanted to get rid of IMAG altogether, we'll just say, okay, find this, replace it with essentially nothing. Same 294 were affected, and we're left with just those styles, right? Likewise, if you've developed your company styles and you don't have any prefixes, or suffixes, and you would like to add that, maybe you get a drawing in that you need to work with, but you don't want to, confuse your technicians, with your particular company styles versus what just came in from the outside. Hey, that's no problem. We can come in to Styles Renamer. We can add a prefix, add a suffix. We'll add a suffix in this point, and we'll just say, in this case, 400 styles were affected, and you'll see that we add that information, to all of them. So hopefully this will get your mind flowing just a little bit with what's possible. It's turned out to be, honestly, internally for us, way more useful than we thought. But we certainly have a number of clients that use it somewhat regularly when they work with drawings from the outside. All right. So the last tool before I turn it over to questions and answers and Jana is the KMZ import utility or KML. Both are Google Earth formats, right? And really all we have to do, I've got a drawing here that's geo-referenced, and I'm going to cheat and just paste in a path here to where that KMZ file resides, and I'm going to hit OK. That's all there is to it. Now, this happens to be a moderately large KML file, so it's going to take it just a second to kind of churn through and work through this. It always seems more like an eternity when you're on a national broadcast like this, but it'll finish up in just a second. We'll get a dialog box that says whether it was successful or not. It'll tell us that it's done, and it should be finishing up here in just a second. So while it's doing that, I'm going to kind of maybe cheat and take a peek at some of the questions. And while we're waiting there, I'm going to start scrolling down some of these questions. Wow, there's a lot of them. So let me not start in the middle. Yeah, so how much does IMAGINiT Utilities for Civil 3D 2020 cost? One of the things, in just a second, we're going to talk about, where to get more information on this. But, if you have your subscription through us, meaning you get your subscription through IMAGINiT or ASI at this point, then it's free. We provide these to you at absolutely no cost. If you would just like to purchase them, standalone licenses are in the $349 range. There are network licenses available as well. I'm going to jump over. You can see that the import was complete. We'll say OK. All of that line work appears, on this site. Really, it's just the reciprocal of being able to export. I'm not sure why Autodesk didn't provide the import along with it, but that's okay. We took care of that. So with that, let me stop sharing, and we've got just a little bit. I think really one more slide. Yeah. So where you can go for more information on this, go to IMAGINiT.com. Yeah, and you'll see under if you hover over software on the far left-hand side, near the bottom of that particular flyout, you'll see IMAGINiT Utilities. And from there, that will take you right to the page that talks about not only the utilities for Civil 3D, but the utilities that we have for Revit and Bolt as well. So with that, I'm going to let Jana stop the recording.
One moment while I stop today's recording.